It's good day, brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy, Millsy. Right, home Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew a version 1.0 deck list of the commander in front of us on my quest out brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby. It's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. The deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. As well as I'd really appreciate if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe. Consider checking out the links in the description. The Discord is live, and Mikey and I are hanging out chatting. As well as I did drop my official Mersey Brews merch. I'd love to have you check it out. But today, we're going back and updating Ognis, the Dragon's Lash. A deck that I've always enjoyed and thought maybe here at the end of the year I'd go back and pick some of my old favorites and take a shot at them again. Ognis is a Jund 3/3 with haste that says whenever a creature we control with haste attacks, you make a tapped treasure. The really cool part about this ability is that there are a lot of ways to give creatures haste, so we can either attack with creatures that haste or give creatures haste, and that means we're going to get more tapped treasures. We're going to try to draw and dig for pieces just to make sure that we can get into more of them to keep our game plan going. Treasures matter. There's a lot of ways to get value from treasures when you're sacrificing them for mana, especially a lot of aristocratic types of effects, and that's what we're going to try to do as well, since we want to use those treasures for mana. And then we're the perfect colors to do our extra combat game plan, so that's what we're going to do. Haste has a lot of different forms and a lot of different ways to look at it. Something like Chandra, Acolyte of Flame, makes 2 elementals with haste that sacrifice themselves in the next end step. So there's a way to get 2 tap treasures per turn there. Zerial can actually give all of our creatures +1/+1 haste until end of turn, meaning that every creature is then going to get a tap treasure for us. And she does have the option when you get up to her ultimate to give you an extra combat each turn. Allow us to get more and more tap treasures. Lannery Storm, whenever it attacks, gets a treasure, so you're basically going to get a tap treasure and an untapped treasure with Ognis out. And whenever you sack a treasure, it gets a little buff until the end of turn. Enduring Courage is going to give all creatures that come in under our control +2/+0 and haste until end of turn. So the turn they come in, they're going to be able to attack and get that tap treasure. Juan and Lena each turn can hand out some counters and haste to another creature, which is pretty cool, again, allowing them to attack and getting that treasure. Kellogg has haste, so it's always going to get the treasure with Ognis, and then it gets a treasure when it attacks. We actually could sack 5 treasures to gain control of a creature for as long as we have Kellogg at sorcery speed, so that's a pretty cool way to use our treasures there. Questy B has haste and a myriad of other abilities to help us hurt our opponents and get in for some good damage. And then Ultimate Oddity may look odd of 4/4 with trample and haste, but if you flip it over, it gives all your creatures +1/+1 trample and haste, which is a great ability. Buff our whole board and give everything the ability to get those tap treasures on attack. Yahenni has haste itself and can sack other creatures to grow itself. Not a bad ability, and also can sack creatures to give itself indestructible. So Yahenni's going to get that treasure return, but then, right, has that ability to kind of grow and get to be more of a threat. Fires of Yavimaya gives all of our creatures haste. We have a couple of these enchantments in the deck that are going to give all our creatures haste, making sure that they're always triggering Ognis. And then Elemental Mastery is a fun one. It says you enchant a creature and it can tap to make X 1/1 elementals, where X is this creature's power, and you get rid of them at the next end step. They have haste, which is really nice, and this pairs really well with our extra combats game plan, because at the start of every combat, especially if you're untapping that creature, you could tap them and make more elementals and get more tap treasures and deal more, damage with those 1/1s that come in. But we're going to talk about card draw because there's a lot of way in our deck to do it. We have things like Orin Frostfang that draws cards whenever a creature we control that gets into combat and deals damage to a player, which is great. We have a couple great draw spells that give us treasures. Seize the Spoils, Big Score, Unexpected Windfall, all give us treasures and draw us cards, which is something we want to do. It kind of activates both part of our game plan. Dig for more pieces and get some treasure. On top of it, Deadly Dispute lets us sack a creature or an artifact to draw 2 and make a treasure, which is nice because we could sack a treasure if we wanted to, or just, sack a token. And then Idol of Oblivion can draw us a card every turn because we're inevitably going to be making a token every turn. But I think where the deck needs to transition from just attacking to getting some more value is making our treasures matter. And the truth is, there's a lot of ways you could do it. The first thing I thought of personally was something like Chatterfang that's going to give us creatures every time we make treasures, meaning that we could potentially get in for more treasures. And Chatterfang is going to work really well with Pitiless Plunderer, a card that's also in the deck that makes us treasures when our creatures die. You could start to see that Ognis can also be a hotbed here for you to play these other really popular commanders in your 99 instead of them being in your command zone. Namely, a card that isn't in the deck but could be something like Corvold would work very well here as well. Goldspan makes a treasure whenever it attacks, but treasures can then sack for 2 mana instead of 1, which could be really helpful when we go to fund our spells. Grim Hireling lets us make 2 treasures anytime one or more creatures deal combat damage to a player. That's pretty useful. Again, stacking our treasures up for other abilities and just making sure that we can fund some of the things we want to do. Jolene makes an extra treasure every time we make a treasure, which is a great ability, but it says whenever a player attacks one or more of our opponents, that player makes a treasure. So we're going to get another extra treasure or 2 every time, and we can sack treasures to get Jolene a little bit bigger if we want. Kalain makes a treasure when she comes in. It says any other creature that enters that you paid mana from treasures to cast get a couple extra counters on them when they come in. Again, we're going to inevitably have all these treasures we're going to want to use to cast spells and creatures. So I think counters help there. I'm really excited about the idea of Magda the Horde Master in this deck. So whenever you commit a crime, you get a tap treasure. That's not as important. It's not going to happen all that often, but the bottom ability I think is really big. You could sack 3 treasures to make a 4/4 Scorpion Dragon token with haste. So basically, you could dump a bunch of your treasures into these Scorpions if you want to, and then they have haste so they can attack again and get more treasures back. But the point is, we could take advantage of some of these aristocrat-y style abilities, like a Marionette Master and Mirkwood Bats and Marionette Apprentice that care about artifacts coming in, or the Marionettes care about them leaving. Mirkwood cares about them either coming in or getting sacrificed. And you could start to get just this incremental value every time we use them. So the Apprentice and the Master are going to have our opponents lose some life whenever our treasures go to the graveyard. Apprentice is just 1 to everybody. Marionette Master loses life equal to its power to a target opponent, so 1 opponent versus everyone on the Apprentice. But the point is, if you're sacking 3 or 4 treasures in a turn, you can just spread out some real damage. Mirkwood says whenever we make one or whenever we sacrifice one, each player loses a life. So if we take an attack with 5 or 6 creatures with haste, that's 6 life to everybody before we even get into combat, before we even do other things. And I think this is where our deck's really going to shine, is these treasure aristocrat-y style effects on top of what we're already trying to do. Nadia's Nightblade, very similar to the Marionettes, 1 life and we gain 1 life whenever a token leaves. Reckless Fireweaver and 1 or 2 other cards in the deck care about when artifacts enter, so when those treasures come in, we get to deal some damage. And then Zorn necks us an additional treasure every time we make treasures, which is really important because if we go back and take a look at Ognis, you know that Ognis says whenever a creature you control with haste attacks, not whenever 1 or more, whenever 1. So Zorn and Jolene are actually going to double up every individual attack Ognis treasure to get us 2 instead of 1, which is huge in the grand scheme of things and is really important. But where I think the deck's going to crescendo into becoming a real problem for our opponents and can really help us out in the long run is with extra combats. I think in the grand scheme of things, our deck's going to do a very good job of being aggressive. But I think this is where once we've built the right board state, we can just lock out a game and win. So the idea of this combo basically survives around Aggravated Assault. And enchantment that for 5 mana, you can untap all creatures we control and get an additional combat followed by an additional main phase if we can only do it at sorcery speed. We are playing basically 5 different cards in the deck that are all going to try to net us enough mana to pay for Aggravated Assault multiple times a turn. Sort of Feast and Famine gives one of our creatures protection from black and from green, and when it hits a player, that player discards a card and we untap all lands we control, meaning we would need at least 5 lands to pay for Aggravated Assault to make this combo work, as long as we can guarantee the creature's going to get in multiple times. The Reaver Cleaver says the creature gets Pulse and Trample, and whenever it hits a player, we make that many treasure tokens. Well, we would basically need a creature to hit at least for 5 damage, right, in order to be able to Ag Assault. Really, it only needs to be 4 if we have Zorn or Jolene out. But the truth is, that is the magic number, right? Is 5. Bear Umbra and Nature's Well. Sorry, the answer is only 4. I apologize for that. But Nature's Lore and Bear Umbra are both going to untap all of our lands in different scenarios. Bear Umbra does it whenever the enchanted creature attacks. Nature's Well does it whenever 1 or more creatures we control deal combat damage to a player. So we could potentially untap our lands multiple times in a combat step. Again, we can only pay for Ag Assault at instant speed, or sorcery speed, but we could then play something in combat and still get our lands untapped. But the point is, this is a dangerous combo. Think about this. If I'm Aggravated Assaulting for multiple combats, I have a way to get my creatures in without them really getting damaged, and I have any of those aristocrat payoffs, and I'm sacrificing treasures in order to pay for Aggravated Assault, I'm just siphoning the board out, right, over a couple combats. And I think that's where the top end of this deck really lies. But I said before on the show, and I'll say it again, no deck's ever complete. This is my version 1.0 shot at the deck, even though we've looked at it a long time ago. And in testing, I think the real way this deck gets better is by putting some money into the creatures that are in the deck. Both Goldvein Hydra and Shivan Devastator are both huge creatures that do a lot for our deck. Both of them only cost 1 mana and X, come in with X counters on them, and have great abilities. Goldvein Hydra, Vigilance, Trample, Haste. Devastator, Flying, Haste. Goldvein has the bonus that when it dies, you get that many treasures. But the point is, these are now huge creatures that come in and have haste and can deal damage. Great targets for sort of Feast and Famine. Great targets for Reaver Cleaver. But the point is that they're big attackers that get bigger the later you draw them in the game. If you draw them when you have 15 mana, they are huge attackers. The third one alongside this that is really good but carries a massive price tag is Old Gnawbone. This is a dragon that whenever you deal combat damage to an opponent, you make that many treasures. And that can completely bankroll a game with Aggravated Assault. It's already a 7/7 dragon in the air, so it's very hard to deal with. And I think that's where you would start to just, if you were to spend a couple extra $60, $70 to add these to an Old Gnawbone, you'd probably push your deck over the edge of just being able to get these nice big attackers to do it. I threw up Mob Rule here because the deck already plays Insurrection, a big red enchantment that gains control of everyone's creatures and gives them haste on a turn. Well, Mob Rule does something very similar. You just pick 4 greater or 3 or less on power, and you get all those creatures, they get haste, and just a way to make a bunch of treasures in a turn. I think if you want to take Ognis up on the price scale and the power scale, you're using things like this. You could add in something like Mistcutter Hydra as well, another haster that comes in with counters on it. All Gnawbone, get some dragons that care about treasures as well. I think there's a lot of other ways you could take something like this, but I think that Ag Assault combo is kind of where you'll see the deck, I think, excel as you get higher up on the price and the power scale. But getting into playtest number 1, keeping a 3-lander with Arcane Signet, that Overwhelmed Oddity, Kellogg, and then Revelant Riches, a card that we didn't talk about just because I think it's more or less assumed that if you're playing a treasure deck these days, you have a Revelant Riches if you could play it. Whatever creature an opponent controls dies, you make a treasure. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 10 or more treasures, you win the game. Very easy to do with Ognis, right, since we're getting them every turn. We'll just Game Trail here. Turn 1, we have that mountain in our hand. That just gets us access to green. It is good to remember with Ognis that you can pay each of those hybrid ones with either. So if you have 3 red sources, you could do it. If you have 1 of each, you could do it. We just drew Wolfgar, which is a card I didn't talk about in the presentation either, but great for this deck. Whenever a triggered ability of a permanent we control triggers from a creature attacking, it goes off an additional time, Ognis would then give you multiple tap treasures, so a great ability right for that. I think we just get the Arcane Signet down, so that way this turn, I think we just get Ognis down and make the treasure this turn. It has haste, so we get in there and attack. I mean, it doesn't have trample, but just get it. There's probably a world where somebody's wide open for an attack there. Here on turn 4, we have 5 mana, so I kind of like the idea of Wolfgar. I guess the only downside is Wolfgar can't attack this turn. Kellogg could potentially lead to more treasures. Right, Kellogg would net us 3 treasures this turn. Wolfgar would only net us 2. So I guess the question becomes, what makes the most sense? I also like the idea of something like the Oddity, because once we flip it over, right, it becomes even better. Lelia's not a bad attacker, right, allowing us to do her things, but I think I kind of just like Kellogg this turn. We get 2 tap treasures, 1 treasure from his ability. So we would still have 3 mana this turn. So we could play something like Rising of the Day, I think. We would lose the treasures, but that could guarantee more haste for other creatures, but if I do that this turn, then I think I'm wanting to play something like Wolfgar next turn. And the haste doesn't really help me other than Wolfgar, but I guess that would be 6 treasures next turn. So maybe that does make more sense to really make sure that we're getting it automatically no matter what, right? Every time a creature comes in. Because here this turn, we've got 4, 6 mana, so we could Wolfgar. We could also Tempt with Vengeance for 5 to make 5 elementals. That would be 7 treasures or 6 with Wolfgar. So I kind of like the idea of Wolfgar. Again, it comes in with haste. Sorry, I apologize, not 6, it's 8 treasures, right? Because 2 from each of them, and then 2 from Kellogg, right? So that's 8 treasures total this turn. And they each get that melee buff as long as we're attacking all of our opponents, which I think we want to. 6, 6, 6, 5, 7, 7, right? Really get in for some damage. Then we could sack 5 with Kellogg to get control of a creature if we want to. I mean, we might as well if someone has a good one to take advantage of. But the point now is we're getting ourselves into a great space. Here on this turn, I mean, I would probably Ulvenwald Oddity. I've got 9 mana here in treasures that I can use, and we're getting 10 more this turn. I think I'd play the Revel in Riches. I mean, we don't mind getting rid of the treasures. I guess maybe Krenko? Leaves 1 treasure left over, but we're getting another treasure, right? Krenko has an interesting ability. Whenever an artifact gets put in the graveyard, we can pay a red. If we do, we make a goblin. I think I would just sack this for the red and make the goblin. Because I can use the red mana, right, with Krenko's ability. Now I've got 6 attackers this turn. You know, move to combat, attack. That's 12 treasures. And then from just attacking, and then 2 from Kellogg, making me 14 treasures this turn. And then, you know, we're dealing some damage this turn with the melee, and I think we're in a good spot. Next turn, we just probably tempt. Well, we win off the Revel in Riches if no one has a way to get rid of the riches, but if they do, we just tempt, make even more treasures, get even more damage out there. Krenko could start building a Goblin Empire for us as well. There's a lot of options there. But let's go to playtest number 2. I think we kind of got what we needed on that first one. Keeping a 3-lander with Putrefy for some removal, Magda for those dragons, Krenko again, and then a Victimize, a way to get some creatures back from the graveyard. Well, there's Woodland Cemetery, so we could potentially have all 4 colors, but I think one of them's going to have to come in tap, so let's put the Cemetery in tap since we don't have anything for it. All right, well, turn 2, we see the Llanowar Waste, but I think we want to get Magda down this turn. So whenever we commit a crime, we get a tap treasure. Committing a crime is targeting an opponent, anything they control, or cards in their graveyard. So we get another removal in Assassin's Trophy. I like the Shadow Blood Ridge. I'm kind of thinking adjust to Krenko here. And we can take some attacks if we want to relieve them back. The point is we're just trying to gather up some resources to attack. I guess the only downside is that Magda doesn't have haste, right? So she can't trigger Ognis at the moment. But here I think we just get Ognis down and attack, get 2 treasures, 1 for Krenko, 1 for Ognis. And then try to set up next turn. We've got some nice removal, so we can get some treasures off of Magda that way. But I like Krenko as a value piece. Whenever you get rid of a treasure, you can make a goblin. And then you can actually sack an artifact to give a counter on each goblin. But the point is you can just make goblins that have haste until end of turn, you know, unless we find one of our ways to give everything haste. Well, there's Mishra, fun enough, just the video that came out yesterday. Mishra's great here because when we attack, we're going to drain our opponents. I like the Idol of Oblivion because it's going to draw us no matter what, right? Because of the tokens. But I would probably just sack a treasure for a red for Krenko to make a goblin, right? Might as well get another extra attacker in this turn. And then we can draw with the Idol of Oblivion. And now we attack, getting 3 treasures, right? 1, 2, 3, because that's 3 creatures with haste. Magda won't get us a treasure, but that's okay. We could use these to make the Scorpion Dragon, but I don't think we need to. Obviously, we can't sack them for mana right now because of the fact that they're tapped, but you know, now gives us options for next turn. Here in the next turn, 4, 9 mana available to us. We could Totentans for 8, just netting a ton of treasures. Or we could like Totentans for 7 and get another goblin this turn if we want to. We could put something like Questing Beast or Mishra down. But I kind of like the idea of just railing off the Totentans, going for 3. Let's do 7 total, so we get 7 rats. And then I would sacrifice the treasure for red to make another goblin. So we're going to end up with 7 rats, plus 2, that's 9, and then 3. So we're going to net 12 treasures this turn on the attack. We can go ahead and draw with that little Oblivion. We're going to end up netting 12 treasures this turn on the attacks, just funding ourselves for mana for next turns as we keep going. That could mean 4, right? 4 dragons next turn to attack. And I think we're in a good spot here. We'd love to see something off the top of the deck that would make it even better. Well, there you go. There's Wolfgar, right? Making it even better for us. Again, we'd love to see a way to give all of our creatures haste. But again, let's say 12. So 12 treasures this turn. We'll go one more turn. 12 treasures this turn. Play Wolfgar. go down a couple treasures to play Questy B, and I would use another one of them to make another goblin this turn, since these goblins won't have haste, and neither will these. Have one that can net us another treasure this turn. I guess Mishra. Go down to 3 to make another goblin this turn with haste. And then go to attack 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. That gets doubled twice because of Wolfgar. Would be just lethal on the spot, probably. But again, just a big attack, right? Lots of melee that's going to go off twice. For Wolfgar, bunch of treasures, right? We're just in a great spot there if no one has the board wipe for us, last turn. Let's get into our last playtest. A 5-lander with Lagomos and Lannery Storm. Lagomos making that 2/1 elemental that can attack each turn, and has that upside that if 5 or more creatures have died this turn, we could search our library for any card, which isn't bad. Get the Blazemire Virgin, turn 1. We'll get the swamp and that'll allow the cemetery to come in, but we'll just get Kalain down. That'll make us a treasure. Turn 3, I think we just get Ognis down. Since we used the treasures for it, it actually comes in with a counter on it. We could attack with both of them and just get 1 treasure. Kalain wouldn't get us a treasure for attacking, but my thought here is now we can get something like Chandra down if we want to, or we could get... I'm just trying to think of what's the best way to get the most value this turn. Chandra would net me 2 treasures. Lagomos would net me 1. Lannery would net me 2. I only got 5 mana, right? I guess we'll do the Chandra, make the 2 elementals, right? They get haste until end of turn, and then attack with the 3 of them. They're going to leave at the end of the turn, but that nets us 3 treasures, right? The whole point is here is we're just, right, stacking up those treasures for future turns. The Mastery is great, but I don't really want to put the Mastery on Ognis. I'd kind of rather put it on something like Lannery Storm, where we can really get a lot of them per turn. But I think we Mirkwood Bats. Use 2 of these for the Lannery Storm. Make the 2 elementals again. Right, that's 2 more damage to each opponent with the Mirkwood Bats. And then go to combat attack. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 treasures tapped, 1 treasure in untapped. So that's 5 more damage right off the Mirkwood Bats. These 2 sacrifice at the end step, so that would be more damage on Mirkwood Bats. We have some mana left, but I think I would wait for next turn where we could just put the Mastery on Lannery. Sack all of these for the mana that would grow it, allow it to make more of the elementals, right? Life loss off the Mirkwood for sacking them, life loss on them for them coming in. You could start to see, I think, where this playtest is going to go. We'd love to find any other way to have them hit harder. I guess Wolfgar does it, but the point is that then it's even better. But Wolfgar is an even better draw, because think about that. If I sack all of these this turn, that's 7 damage here. Lannery is now a 9/2 until end of turn. Tap it for 9 1/1s. That's 9 more damage here. Right, so that's what, 14, 15 damage so far this turn. We go to combat, attack with everything. Double triggers on Ognis makes what, 30 treasures, something like that for them all attacking. Maybe even if it's upper 20s, that's still damage from Mirkwood, and our opponents are just dead. And then they have to survive the 7/7 elementals because of Wolfgar, right? Oh, sorry, no, just Wolfgar has melee. But still, I mean, they're all 1/1s, so even if they do hit, they're dealing damage. I just think that's a board state that unless somebody has any removal, the game's just over. Again, a little bit of Magical Christmas Land, but it just goes to show you that, like, some of these board states you can create are pretty darn good. But let me know, what do you think of Ognis down in the comment section below, and I will catch you guys next time.